Hello, everyone, and welcome to our last. Is it our last? I don't know. Yeah, our last YA Mentor video chat. Yay! I'm in the middle of doing 4 of these in a row, so a little. Okay. So I'm Sarah. I'm on the board for Pitchwars, and I am the agent liaison this year. If you don't know anything about Pitchwars, if you've just stumbled upon this video, either live or replay, you can go to pitchwars.org to learn more about the organization. But in summary, it's a volunteer-run annual mentoring event where established authors and industry professionals help mentor a up-and-coming writer by doing a full round of revisions and then preparing them for our agent showcase. So yeah, definitely check out pitchwars.org. If you don't know anything about it, you can find more information about the organization. If you're watching on Twitter or Facebook or somewhere else where it's embedded, you probably want to go ahead and click through to YouTube so that you can participate in the chat and ask questions. Lee Mart, our social media director, is on Twitter. She's going to be live tweeting some things, and she's going to try to bring over questions if she sees them on Twitter, but it's not a guarantee. So if you want to make sure your question gets asked, come over to YouTube and participate in the chat there. You can go ahead and start asking questions now, and we'll get started with them as soon as our mentors introduce themselves. Submissions open on September 27th. So we have about 7 days. We have about a week before they open. We have one more adult mentor video chat coming up on Thursday. And then we also have 3 more Twitter chats coming up, including one that features mentors from all different categories and genres right before submissions open. So you can go to pitchwars.org and click on the blog, and you can find the information about those. You can also watch previous mentor video chats. We have 2 previous YA ones, 2 previous adult ones, and 2 previous middle grade ones. So if you want to go back, there's a playlist on my YouTube channel where you can find those. And I think we're ready to bring our, I did forget one thing. Thank you to J.Elle, who has volunteered today to help moderate the comments. So you'll see her in the comments, and she's helping us out by making sure no trolls ruin the party. So now we're going to go ahead and bring on our mentors and have them introduce themselves. So we're going to start with Sheena.
Hi, I'm Sheena Boekweg. You pronounce that Boekweg, like broke leg. Like, oh no, I just broke my wig. I am the author of Glitch Kingdom. It came out in February from Firewall and Friends. I just also announced another book, A Sisterhood of Secret Ambitions, which comes out in June of 21, also through Firewall and Friends /Macmillan. It is a ridiculously fun feminist story about a secret society of women who influence the political process and choose our leaders. It's really fun. I'm also a contributor to Everybody Shines, which is a fat positive anthology, which comes out in May from Bloomsbury. And I was a Pitchwars mentee in 2015. Mentored by the fabulous Megan Lally, who is a freelance editor and author. And I mentored in 2017. I mentored a Team Pit winner, Angela Wang, who she just actually joined the Avengers of Color mentorship with her amazing story. And then in 2018, I mentored a YA paranormal by my friend Kate Meadows. It was a fat positive monster story, and I absolutely loved it. I am a member of Team Marshmallow, which is with me and my co-mentor, Alechia Dow, whose Sound of Stars is incredible. And you will notice that we're both here wearing matching cardigans. Thank you, Tori.
Hi, everyone. It's Lisa. I am the author of The Sound of Stars, which came out in February this year, which is a YA sci-fi book about an alien and a teen librarian on a road trip to possibly save humanity with a lot of music and books. Oh, and this is it. Sorry. Okay, let's see. I mentored in 2018. We've got matching cardigans, that's right. I mentored Ty Guest Girma, and she's incredible. Holy crap, she's amazing. So, yeah, I think that's all I've got to say. Oh yeah, I have another book coming out in 2022. Yeah, but we'll talk about that another time. All right, bye.
You're muted, Daphne.
Hi, everyone. Without the mute, I'm Daphne Tonge. Nice to see everyone. I am not an author, but I am the founder and owner of Illumicrate, which you can see up there, which is the UK's first sort of YA and crossover book subscription box. So I've been running that since 2015, and before that, I was a book blogger for a very long time, since 2011. I also work as marketing director for Knights of, which is an inclusive children's publisher here in the UK, and have judged several kind of writing awards as well. So I am part of Team Villains with my co-mentor, who's not on today, but my co-mentor Kat Dunn, the author of Dangerous Remedy. So yeah, that's all from me. Thanks so much.
Hey everyone, I'm Kylie Schachte. I'm the author of You're Next. It's a YA murder mystery. It's kind of like film noir meets high school. It's got some Riverdale vibes, some Fight Club vibes. And that's out now from Jimmy Patterson Books, and you can buy it everywhere books are sold. So this is my second year mentoring. I mentored last year, 2019. I co-mentored with Aty Behsam, who is, I think, in the second hour of this chat. It's also wonderful. But this year going solo. And I was also a mentee myself in 2017. Your Next is actually my pitchwars book. So that's my little pitchwars success story.
Sorry, I was muted. Hi, I'm Becca Mix. I write YA middle grade and adult fantasy. And all of the things I want to talk about, I'm not allowed to talk about yet. This is my first time mentoring Pitch Wars, and I'm mentoring with my critique partner, Grace Lee, who is also a fantasy writer. And we're taking YA this year. So I've never done Pitch Wars, but I've mentored an AMM, author mentor match, and had a blast. So we are super excited.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming on today, volunteering to answering everyone's questions. And we already have a lot of questions, so we're going to dive right in. Jimmy asks, I just realized the name, Jenny Slenderix. Okay. How rough and unpolished can a manuscript be? How many critique partners and beta readers do you suggest look over the manuscript before submission?
I can jump in. I don't think that there's like a concrete number, like you must hit 5 critique partners, or like you cannot enter or should not enter kind of thing. I think that I would be kind of more introspective and take some kind of like self-awareness and like a hard critical eye to your own process when you think about that. So have you, had other people look at it? Have you listened to their critique? Have you kind of meaningfully processed it and applied it to your work? And that doesn't necessarily mean, taking every single suggestion that they give you and applying it literally. It means, how have you personally as a writer kind of learned and grown from the process of people providing you feedback? I think that that's kind of more important than the number of critique partners that you have, just because I think I've seen this advice come up in other mentor chats in the past, and it's definitely something I believe as well, is like people will often give you feedback that is pretty good at identifying like what might not be working in your manuscript, but is not necessarily spot on in terms of like what exactly you should do to fix it. So I think I would, rather than try and put some kind of like hard numbers on it, which I know is like tempting to do because it can feel kind of squishy whether it's the right time to apply to Pitch Wars or not. I would think about like, how much have I already kind of done some of this learning and growing about my own writing before I involve a mentor in the process, because you want to make sure that you're sort of ready to receive that level of feedback, and you've already kind of done some of the hard work for yourself and are, kind of ready to move on to the next level. Like I often say, when I applied to Pitch Wars in 2017, I had been working on my manuscript for about a year at that point. I had been a part of a critique group that had been providing me with feedback. I knew that certain things were working. Like I knew the character was really strong. I knew the voice was really strong, but I wasn't getting a whole lot of traction in the pretty limited querying that I was doing. I couldn't really figure out why. And so what I needed a mentor to do is like, okay, I've already been in this critique group for a year. I've made a lot of revisions to this work. I know what's working and I kind of have a sense that something's not, but I need somebody else who maybe has a little bit more experience and a little bit more of that like objective third-party eye to come in and give me some recommendations about how I could improve further, because I've sort of stalled out at the level that I'm at. And that's obviously like a really personal decision that's going to vary a lot from person to person. So it turned out that I was right. The voice and the main character all were really, really strong. That stuff more or less stayed the same even as I went through Pitch Wars. I rewrote the entire book from page 1 though, and that's not necessarily going to happen to everybody. So like clearly it was polished in one kind of sense. Otherwise the voice, the main character, that stuff wouldn't have stayed the same, but it like desperately needed the entire plot to be reworked. So for me, I'm not necessarily looking for something that's like super polished and ready to query. I just need to be able to see like the heart and soul of the book and have some kind of sense of what the potential is.
I just want to say, hey, I think if you can get it the best you can get it and you don't know where else to go with it, that's pretty good. For critique partners and beta readers, I would say if you have 2 or 3 critique partners that you really trust, that's pretty cool. If you have 1, that's also pretty cool. But somebody else should have looked at your book, just because otherwise you're like,
good night, mommy.
Sorry. So if you have like 2 to 3 or 1 to 3, that's pretty cool. Beta readers are always good as well, but not too many people. Just don't go for too many people, because you know how like everybody's like, if there's too many chefs in the kitchen, the food never gets cooked or something. I don't know about that, but if there are too many chefs in the kitchen, you get very confusing intel, and you don't need that. Just 2 to 3 people, that helps. 1 person even is enough. Just do your best, and we're there to look at books that have potential. It doesn't have to be perfect. If it were perfect, then you would just query it and be like, hey, I'm done. You know, so that's all I'm going to say. I'm sorry, I'm so chaotic of a person. That's just who I am. All right,
bye. I love that. I think everything Leisha says is correct. Team Marshmallow is united. And I also think it's important to make sure that you do know the heart and soul of your book so that you can know what to push back on for, like, when we give you instructions. It's just important to know your book well enough to know what it is you want to say.
All right. Jay asks, why do you volunteer as mentors or mentor teams, even though I'm sure it's so much work on such a tight schedule? What makes it worth it to you?
I can go. So I had co-mentored in author mentor match previously with one of my best friends and critique partners, Kylie Schachte. And then when Pitch Wars came around, I was like, I want to do it again, and I don't want to be by myself. And I think a part of it is all of my friends are smarter than me. So I get to look really cool because they're all way better at this than I am. But like, actually, I think it gives more to our mentee just in the style I have and the style Grace has. We really like to read the same things, but she is way more like prose focused and I'm more character focused. So it felt like on top of being busy, we could hopefully like give our mentee kind of more like 2 for the price of 1, because we can kind of play off each other. And then if one of us is tired or burnt out, the other one can kind of jump in.
Yeah, so my co-mentor, Kat, was a mentor last year for Pitch Wars, and she, you know, talked a lot about the experience and the great relationship that she had with her mentee. So I was really intrigued, and I actually was a little bit, you know, like almost scared to apply to be a mentor because I wasn't an author per se. But I thought actually with Kat, who is an author and has gone through that author process, and me, who sort of has a little bit more experience on the other side of things in terms of, you know, marketing a book and pitching a book and making and selling a book essentially to an audience, I thought together, it would be great to kind of combine forces and be like a mentor team. And as Becca said, kind of give the best of both worlds. I genuinely love this industry, and I genuinely love supporting new and upcoming authors. So that's kind of why I wanted to do pitch wars and dedicate my time. And at the end of the day, it's it's helping someone fulfill their dreams, and I think that's such a great thing to be a part of.
Yeah, I'll say I've talked about this before, but I was like going into my own pitch wars year. It was like the ultimate pitch wars cynic of like, everybody's like, it's the friends you make along the way, and I was kind of like, yeah, whatever. But I was like a full convert after my first year of like the community and the friends that I made. And I say this a lot, but like my rule coming out of my own pitch wars year is like, anytime I'm given the chance or the opportunity to give back to the community or to just like be there and support other authors, like I just take it, no questions asked. But I will say, like, I take a lot of genuine enjoyment out of mentoring and helping other people kind of like troubleshoot their stories. I talk about this in my wish list, but I see myself more as my mentee's collaborator than their like boss or mentor or somebody in kind of like a position of authority. It's really about like, we're both kind of spitballing things and throwing spaghetti at the wall. And it's really, I don't know, I'm like a nerd, I guess. I like the sort of puzzle of it all, of like, when I see a story that I know is working and there's like something that's holding it back, that process of getting to work together to figure out like, oh, what if we like just turned this thing up a little bit? Or what if we tweaked this a little bit? Is just like really pleasurable for me to do, especially when it's a story that I really love and believe in and enjoy it as a reader. And then on a more even just mercenary level, I genuinely think that being a critique partner in this kind of way, having this kind of investment in somebody else's manuscript and helping them figure out how to make it work better has made me a much better writer. I always feel like so much of my writing skills have improved, not in terms of like being in critique groups or going through pitch wars or whatever, not just from like the critique and the feedback that I've received, but having to do the same kind of thing for somebody else's manuscript.
I would say I just really like helping people and getting to know people, and hey, it's like, man, I like reading stuff. That's it. I really love stories and people. That's it.
And I love when I got into pitch wars in 2015, it was with my 8th manuscript, and I had been working on it for so long and working on publishing for so long, and there was just like this barrier in place mentally that I didn't know what it was that I could get better. And when I was in pitch wars, that barrier was removed. My mentor was able to teach me some of the things that I was doing wrong, and some of the things I could do better. And she also taught me where my strengths were, which gave me a lot of confidence to move forward in my own thing. And it was such a personal gift that it is the ultimate thing to give that, I think, to someone else and to watch it. Because when you become a mentor, you read so many stories and you read like their book and you absolutely fall in love with their book. It's just, there's no question. You fall in love with their book and you fall in love with their words and the way they see the world. And then when you meet your mentor, like, it's so much fun to become their friend and to like genuinely get to know them. And then to see them have that switch flip, to see them figure out, oh, all of these things, it's the coolest thing. It's just like a gift, really. And then the community is also, that's the reason why I keep coming back, is because I need more friends, because I'm really lonely. And when you have conferences or things like this, like, people have to come and say hi to you. Like, it's a good excuse to go talk to people in a social way that that all of the rules of social make a lot of sense.
All right. Who is your mentor, Sheena?
Megan Lally. She was Megan.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned that.
That time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. So here's if it's a question that like is just kind of like a rule question or whatever, I just answer them very quickly so that we can get to as many questions as possible. Oh my gosh, my screen just jumped. 1 second. sometimes the comments all jump like 15 minutes forward. Okay. If a mentor asks for a partial, what percentage of the book should I send? If they ask for a partial, they will ask for a specific page count. So you send them whatever they ask for. So it'll usually be 50 pages or 100 pages. How do you feel about opening pages starting with action?
I have a strong opinion on that. I feel like it's like you're running next to a train. You know what I mean? The story should go, but the story needs to be moving, but it needs to be moving at a pace that you can catch up, that you can hold on, and you can understand what's going on. So I do like forward movement, but I do think sometimes if there's too much action, actually it can be confusing, and it can also like the train can just go off without you.
I feel like people often interpret like the story should start in the middle of the action as like you must open your story in the middle of like a battle scene or like an alien invasion or something like that. And that I think is like exactly what Sheena said, I think is the right point here. It can be done, I think, to start a scene in the middle of a battle or an alien invasion or whatever. Not saying no hard and fast rules around that either, but the way I think about it is that we should catch the main character in the middle of their life when the story starts. So it should not feel like they were just like a sim, like sort of standing, bobbling around, waiting for us to show up for the story to begin. So I always like to feel like the story begins with them kind of already actively moving around their world, wanting things, doing things. It's nice if it's not maybe quite so thrust into the action that, as Sheena was saying, I can kind of catch up with what's going on. So whatever action it is that they're taking part in does not need to be, and probably should not be, the main meat of the story, like whatever the inciting incident is going to be or whatever the main plot is going to be. It should be kind of something else that they were doing prior to that plot kicking off. I think in Save the Cat Writes a Novel, which is a great craft book that I recommend all the time, when they beat out the beginning parts of a story, I think they recommend opening with what they call like the characteristic image, which means that you see the character in doing something that helps you as the reader understand very quickly and not a lot of space, kind of what that character is and who they are and what they're all about. So my book opens up with the main character, like she's racing to get to class. She's running late because she spent her free period like in her car listening to the police scanner because she was tracking this like serial rapist that's been seen in the area. That plot has nothing to do with what else happens in the book, but we learn super quickly that she's like this teen detective, that she, takes on these crimes that are like more serious. It's not just like this low level kind of Nancy Drew type of stuff. So we learn all of that super fast in the first page. And then like the whole rest of the story takes place and that kind of gets left behind. But you learn a lot about her pretty quickly just from that opening.
I agree with everything everyone said. And I'd also say that if I don't know the character and they're just like doing stuff, one or two things is going to happen. Either I'm going to be like, whoa, this scene is written really cool and it's immersive and I can almost forgive it. Or two, I don't care and I don't want to not care. So usually just telling me and showing me what the character is about, just like Kylie said, helps. And also like the train moving, the train. I want to know why the train is moving and how. And I like to be really immersed from the beginning so that I can start to visualize it and then I can understand what's going on. Otherwise, if it's action too fast, I don't understand what's going on and I feel like I'm confused. And if I'm confused and I'm like, oh no, what's wrong with my head? Or, and it's a whole thing. So just really slow down. It's okay. Let us know the character before you give us all these things that happen.
Yeah, I think the point of I don't care is probably the most important one, because I have read beginnings where someone is literally getting murdered, and I've read beginnings where someone is sitting at a desk, and they have both been incredibly compelling, not because of what was happening, but because it mattered to the character. So it got my buy-in. Like, I don't know if any of you have read This Is How You Lose the Time War, but the book opens with her in like, I see the huge smile. That book opens with the main character just kind of in this like totally desolated battlefield. Like, it's not that interesting. And then she finds a note from the woman that she's hunting through time to murder. and you are so immediately bought in. So that's not very exciting. But on the flip side, if you read Diamond City, that chapter ends with a building exploding, and it's super exciting, but they both intensely matter to the character. And I think that for me is where first chapters really sing, and where you get the buy-in of the reader, because you're immediately putting us in their lens and saying, welcome to my world. And you're giving us kind of hints of what they're going to come up against and who they are. And I think that's the most important thing. I think worry less about the set dressing of what's happening and more about giving us that snapshot of this person that is going to take us by the hand and pull us along for 200, 300, 400 pages.
Yeah, especially for me, for like a YA fantasy as well, because, you know, people aren't immediately familiar with the world and you're trying to set up some world building beats right at the beginning. I definitely think it's not a great idea to jump straight into the action, but to think about maybe something that the character is doing, or you know, they are about to do something important in their life that is very specific to them and this world and this character, to give you that like really nice snapshot into their life and what this world is like. I think, you know, it's not necessarily like an action piece, but you know, like a little training sequence, or like preparing for something that's about to happen to them. I always find that really compelling in the beginning, because you're immediately drawn into their world. You learn about them all at the same time, and it kind of like wraps up like really neatly.
And also, I think if you have written an action scene, like, don't panic, because we will be there to help you. First chapters are often one of the things that change, especially the first page. Your mentors are going to be helping you so much. So if you have started with action, like, don't say that that's going to be a no.
All right. Ellie asks, if I use the appeals to fans of type of comps in my query, do you recommend highlighting what components of these comps are similar to my book, or should the comps speak for themselves?
I think it can go both ways. I think if you know the component, like that nugget, and it's true to your book, use it. But don't force it if it's not going to be accurate. So like the book I'm working on right now, I pitch as the city of Ember with fairies meets climate change horror and the Bone Garden. But like if none of those are true, it wouldn't help. So I think that I said this in the last mentor chat, the best comp I have ever heard is for One of Us is Lying, because Karen pitches it as the Breakfast Club with murder. So like you can make it really simple, or you can pull out the nuggets. You just want to make sure it's true to your story. It's not going to be do or die if you just say X meets X. Like, that's okay. It doesn't have to be super specific.
Yeah, I agree. I would actually stray away from highlighting specifically what about the comp is, you know, it is specifically, because I think it kind of takes away from a little bit of the mystery about your work as well. Like a little bit of, you know, you want people to start thinking when they read your comp, ooh, you know, it's going, you know, what cool, you know, things, what cool elements of these comps are they going to use in the story? And I think that's part of the excitement for me of reading a comp or hearing a pitch.
Yeah, I think when you're using when you say the appeal to fans of, you're kind of hinting at the experience of reading the book rather than a specific element of it. Whereas sometimes when you're using a comp, you are referring to a specific element of it. So, all right. Excuse me, my voice is cracking and I don't know why. Tracy asks, did any of the mentors, I'm assuming who were previous mentees, had trouble choosing their final 4 mentors? I've narrowed it down, but cutting those last couple is brutal. Any advice? Oh, Sheena, you're muted.
My bad. Sorry about that. I thought for sure in 2015 that the mentors that I chose, like that 2 of them would absolutely love it. And then the other 2 I just chose based on Phil, just on who I thought would best help my manuscript. My mentor said that she's really good with romance arcs, and I knew that was something that I was struggling with. But I I always went to the choice of what mentors were going to go with who could help my manuscript more than who did I think would like this, because the people I thought would like it did not request, and the people who knew they could help me were the ones that did request. And so that's just my advice for going in towards it.
Yeah, I think once you've narrowed, it sounds like this person is in the place where they've already probably narrowed down based on like genre and favorite books and like all of that kind of more straightforward stuff, which I think obviously, you know, make sure your list is people who are taking your genre, who like books similar to yours, et cetera, et cetera. I think after that, the things to pay attention to are how their mentoring style, what they say in their wish list about how they work with their mentee. And that includes both like the type of work that they might assign you, but also like, you know, are they somebody who's super hands-on and they want to be like texting and DMing with you all the time, like I am? Or are they somebody who's a little bit more reserved and wants to have a little bit more distance? And both of those things are perfectly okay. It just depends on, you know, what kind of relationship you're looking for with your mentor. And I think be really honest with yourself about that and about how you like to work. I think when I was a mentee, you know, as I was putting my list together and I had quite a few that I thought could be a good fit, I made sure to look at what kinds of like comps and wish list items they had beyond just my genre. So looking at, you know, what kinds of books they liked in fantasy or things like that, even though I was submitting a contemporary mystery, because that gave me a better sense of like their taste. And, you know, again, my book wasn't a fantasy, but maybe there's a specific type of trope or something like that that they were talking about in the romance section of their wish list that fit with my book because it has a romantic subplot, even though my book again was mystery. So I think that might help to narrow things down too. But it really, I would really make sure that you're paying attention to the like how I mentor, what kind of relationship I want with my mentee section of people's wish lists.
All right, great. Man, what's going on with me? Okay, maybe I need some of that tea we were talking about. Rachel asks, are you okay with us asking questions to you on Twitter? Okay, cool.
My DMs are open and I'm not like, every time I get a DM from somebody asking a question, I get a lot of like super apologetic, like, so sorry to bother you. I genuinely enjoy doing it. Please DM me. I'm lonely. Like, please talk to me. They're open. I encourage you to reach out.
Point of order though, only DM a mentor if they have explicitly said that they are okay with it. How do you feel about Pinterest mood boards? Do you go on Pinterest for visual inspiration for your works?
I have a sick addiction to Pinterest, and probably a slight case of carpal tunnel. But in all seriousness, I think it can be really helpful. So like I like seeing my critique partners' mood boards because it gives me an idea of the feeling they're going for, which can be really hard to convey. But yeah, I absolutely love the mood boards. We are one of the same in that.
Oh, I love it. It's like what Hannah Witten said, is that there's no plot, only vibes. That's kind of how I start all my books. And so yeah, I'm a big Pinterest person, and when I get stuck, I go back there, and yeah.
All right. Victoria asks, how do you feel about comps that span genres, a YA comp and an MG style comp like a Disney movie?
I think, oh, sorry, go ahead, Becca.
Go ahead.
Oh. I think comps are, especially when you're querying mentors and not necessarily agents, like comps are really just about communicating like the vibe of the book. It's not really about like, yes, exactly the same person who watched this movie or whatever, or read this book is going to be the same person who buys mine. I think once you get into agent territory, you want to make sure it's still okay to include those. You just want to make sure you're also including some recent YA comps so that you're showing that there's a market and a readership and people who will spend real actual money on your book. But that's something that I always work with, or I guess I've only had one mentee, but I will always work with my mentees to help them figure out what comps are appropriate when querying agents. So like, I think Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas, he comps Coco sometimes. Like I don't have any kind of problem with that. It's more about like the mood and the vibe and communicating like the flavor of your book super quickly.
I don't actually really care about comps, and I know it's like one of those like controversial opinions, but I really don't care about it. Like if I'm reading your query and I've gotten to that point where I'm like, oh, comps, I'm like, cool, cool, cool. It's not really like registering in my head. It's just kind of like another little piece of cake, like I don't know, like a little topping, like a sprinkle on the cake. I just want to eat the cake. So that said, when we're going to get the full query together, that's when we can really think about, comps and all that other good stuff that is important. But comps, when you're querying, like, or when you're submitting to pitchwars, I wouldn't worry about it. That's not a thing. And I think if you have like the vibe of this and a vibe of that, you're good.
Yeah, I think comps are either great or they actually don't matter that much.
I think sometimes you can have a great comp that just happens to be a great comp. And then sometimes you have a book that just doesn't have comps that light you up like that, Like Mary Mancusi says her Scorch series is Terminator with dragons, which is just like an amazing, perfect comp, because there's like time traveling dragons. But sometimes a book doesn't quite have anything that like explodes, like that. So I think it's fine not to. I think it's fine. That's a controversial opinion. I think it's fine to not have comps in your query letter. All right. Casey asks, for mentors accepting fantasy, do you like maps? Can we include maps in our full manuscript?
I feel like if you've made a map, if you've made the effort to make a map of your world, absolutely. I think I would love to see it. I love maps. I'm very bad at visualizing where everything is when I'm reading a story unless I have a map. And I also am really bad working out how far things are unless I have a map. So maps are great. I love maps.
Yeah, I would agree. If only because they're really cool. And I'd be like, oh my God, you took the time to make this, but also because it's helpful. Like every fantasy book I read and every fantasy book I write, I have to write my own map because they just move in 1,000 different directions and they like time travel because I have no concept of like how long a mile actually is. So it'd probably be helpful because I'll like flip between maps for like books I'm reading because I have like no sense of direction whatsoever.
I just read The Faithless Hawk, and the first thing I did was open to the maps. I'm like, this is so pretty. And then I just like moved on. I love maps, but like I will not be paying attention to where things are like in general. I just follow the story. I get lost like in general in real life too. I don't like look at maps in real life either.
If you have a map, I would like it. But same to what everybody else said.
All right. Julia has a question about manuscript length. Mine is structured like a thriller, but closest genre is fantasy. It's about 50,000 words. Is that a problem? And I will say I did drop a link in the comments that has a whole bunch of word counts for children, middle grade YA, and adult books by genre. So make sure you check that out, but I'll let our mentors answer this question.
I would say, I mean, you're sending to pitch wars. There's no real perfect rule here for the length of your manuscript. We're going to be doing revisions and edits together, so it's either going to be more or less later. I mean, I wouldn't worry too much about that. It's when you're like 160,000 words and you're like, it's an epic fantasy. Then we're like, whoa, that's a lot of work. But 50,000 and you feel like it's tight and it's where you want it to be and it's as good as you can do it, that's fine. I wouldn't say it's a problem because it's going to change. It always changes. It doesn't matter what you do. You're going to change it. So I wouldn't worry about it.
Anybody else? Okay. Tamara asks, can you say if you have a feeling that you might be leaning towards a dark submission or a lighter submission? Are you looking for one of those more than the other right now?
I'm taking literally every genre except for historical and memoir. And I wish that I could narrow that down more for people, but like, I really can't. I read so omnivorously that's why I take every genre, is because I just like, I don't know what it is that I'm going to think that I'm going to fall in love with. So I feel like everything on my wish list is weighted pretty equally. There are some genres on my wish list that I'm pickier about than others, and I specify what exactly I'm picky about in those genres. But I'm looking for dark, I'm looking for light. I almost didn't, last year my mentee had a horror manuscript, and I almost didn't take horror at all because everything scares the crap out of me. But I fell so deeply in love with her book that I just she converted me completely. I've read like a million other horror things since I worked with her, and now I don't sleep anymore, but that's fine because I loved her book so much. So there's no way for me to predict at this point which way it's gonna end up going. I love light, funny, fluffy stuff, and I also love really dark and grisly stuff. And so I'm open to everything.
Anybody else want to chime in?
No, same. I'm
Yeah.
quite open to
What
both. Yeah.
My niece has woken up, and one of her favorite things to do is to put shoes on and stomp on the tile floor. So if you hear anything, that's what that is. All right. Jordan asks, can you describe your process for narrowing submissions down to the final mentee?
Okay, so we've read the submissions and we're like, whoa, there's so many that are amazing. What am I going to do? And then we start going through them finer and finer and thinking, which one can I help the most? Which one do I have a great vision for? Which one makes me go, and into the night or into the void, whatever. That's how my process is. It's like I have to really feel it, and I still think about it, and then I'm like, that's the book for me. That's it.
Yeah, I'm sort of chaotic in the way that I go through my inbox. So like as I'm reading through submissions, I'm just kind of requesting willy-nilly as I go. So I don't kind of like wait until the end to request after I've read everything. I just sort of like, oh, I like that. Oh, I like that. And so people will get requests for me probably all throughout the submission or the reading period. As I'm reading, similar to what Alicia's saying, I'm thinking about like, how can I help this manuscript? What's my vision for like what it needs? So I'm sort of taking notes as I go of things that I think might ultimately end up in an edit letter. I also, somewhere in this process, either when I first request or as I'm reading, I might reach out and ask some questions, questions that are designed to help me get to know this the potential mentee a little bit, but also, again, trying to tap into like, what's your creative vision for your work? Because I want to make sure that it's something that I can help with. So, might ask like, what do you love the most about your book? What do you think it needs the most work on? Is there anything that you just like absolutely would be totally unwilling to change? And I know everybody wants to be just like super chill and agreeable and say yes to everything, but you definitely want to be honest there so that you don't end up working with somebody who has just like a fundamentally clashing vision to yours. And so I'm asking all of those questions kind of as I read. I don't otherwise really communicate with potential mentees a whole lot beyond just like asking those questions and being like, cool, thanks for answering, because I don't want to get anybody's hopes up. But that is, once I have kind of all of those answers to those questions, and I'm getting a sense of like, I can kind of see what this person is like. I can kind of see what they're hoping for, what their big dream for their manuscript is. And also I have a lot of ideas about how I might help them make that vision come to life. That's how I sort of narrow down on the manuscript. So that I want to work with is ultimately going to be the person whose vision I have the clearest ideas for and feel like I could do the most to help them out with the skills that I have as a writer and a critique partner.
Anybody else? Okay. Victoria asks, is it okay to ask questions on Twitter about specific things that they would accept if they don't specifically say they want it in their wish list? Yes. You can at pretty much any mentor and ask them that. We just don't allow pre-pitching, which is like, I have this very specific concept. Do you want that? We don't, and we tell our mentors not to answer those questions too. So, because we don't want 4,000 people asking every mentor those questions, which is what would happen. But yeah, if you have like a kind of a general idea, like such as LGBTQ characters, you can definitely ask. What is the best piece of advice you've received or learned about improving your writing craft? Alicia's ready.
Okay, so imagine it. 2017. I was in writing in the margins mentorship, and my first mentor and was Tamara Matea. She was awesome, and she's like, "Okay, here's the biggest advice I can give you, Alicia." I was like, "All right, I'm ready." And the advice was, you need to inhale art to exhale words and more art. So if you're inhaling your art, and you're filling that well with like books, movies, all kinds of things, you can exhale all this other great stuff. You know, you need to keep filling yourself up so that you can push some stuff out. And that has stuck with me because that was really, really important. I needed to hear that because I was not allowing myself to read books or watch movies or do any of this because I'm like, oh, I gotta write. But then when you're starting to fill yourself up and you're watching stuff, you get inspired, you get new ideas, you get all these other things. So inhale art, exhale art. Boom. It's really good.
I love
had
that.
a really boring answer, and now I'm like, shit, that was really good. I'm like writing that down for later. I wholeheartedly agree with what Alicia said. I think on a more like tactical, like sentence by sentence, like here's how to make your writing stronger level. I think that the two things that have helped me the most, and they're kind of interrelated, is understanding how to write a like super compelling character arc. So understanding like how a character should change and evolve over the course of a story can be both for better or for worse. It'll usually be for better. And there's, again, really great resources out there. Save the Cat Writes a Novel is a good one, as well as Helping Writers Become Authors has a really good free resource. It's like a 12-part series on character arcs that I always recommend. And then the kind of related concept, once you have a really good character arc, is learning how to put the reader as deep into the character's point of view as possible, both for first person and third person. So eliminating any distance between the main character and the reader. And there's a lot of different things I think that go into that, but putting them really deeply grounded in their body and their physical reality, you know, so that you're not just kind of like telling them what the character is doing, but we're kind of in it with them, experiencing it alongside them. I've been doing a whole Pitchwars revision advice series on my blog. So I have a whole bunch of recommendations around how people can achieve that kind of stronger, closer POV type stuff. So that's KylieFrancine.com. And you can check out my blog, and all of that stuff is Pitchwars revision advice. But all of those answers are way more boring than what Alicia said. So I'm going to be quiet now.
Yeah, mine's not very exciting either. I'm going to cheat and say two. I'm sorry. So the one is to read widely, or go off of Alicia's way better advice, inhale widely. So I feel like I can tell if someone writes YA fantasy and only ever reads YA fantasy. I feel like inhaling, whether that's like video games or books or movies that are totally outside of your genre, will only make your work better, because you're going to learn like the tricks and themes and stuff that just don't pop up in your little bubble. And then the other one is for editing, and that's anytime a reader or an editor or an agent or a mentor says that something is off in your book, they're probably right, but their suggestion is wrong. And it's on you to find out what the solution is. But the fact that they're snagging on something means it has to be fixed.
For me, the best advice I've received is to lean into what makes you weird. Like lean into the weirdness of your story, because that's what will get you to stand out. That will be what will get you into, help you get published. Because in my writing, I used to be a little bit more nervous about like the weird parts of me, or like the painful parts of me. And sometimes I would even protect my characters too much, just because they were so sweet. But like, just really lean into whatever your story is and tell that story, no matter what anyone else thinks of it, because that's your story to tell.
All right. This is great. So I'm really distracted. Someone's trying to get in the door. It's my niece. All right. I would also add that everyone's writing process is different, because there are especially certain like mega best-selling authors that are like, this is how I write, and if you don't write like this, you're not a real writer, blah blah, and like, don't listen to them. They're full of ish. So if one has trauma in their past and their book has similar trauma as theme, but one isn't comfortable sharing that, does one have to hashtag their book? There are no hashtags in Pitch Wars, but I'm assuming you mean like own voices, and absolutely not. We think people should only share what they are comfortable sharing with us, and if you're not comfortable sharing with us, that is 100% fine. I think everyone feels that way. That's like our organization viewpoint. So is an author bio paragraph something you want to see in a query letter, even if the author doesn't have writing credentials?
Yes.
I personally don't care. I have a somewhat controversial standpoint on author bio paragraphs, which is like, I think I got really irritated with writing them when I was querying, and now my stance is like, have it, don't have it, I don't fucking care. Like, if you want to include it, if you want to tell me a little bit something about yourself, absolutely. I think like what the question seems like it's actually asking here is like, is it okay to have an author bio paragraph even if you don't have writing credentials? And absolutely, I can't wait to know more about you and what you want to tell me about yourself. But if you're like sweating over it the way that I used to, feel free to leave it out. That's fine. We will get to know each other eventually.
You also don't need author or writing credentials. You don't need that to have written a book. I mean, you don't. So, I mean, you can just say, hey, my name is blah, 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 and I like, blops. And that's fine. I'm happy to know that. I like stuff too. So, you can tell us what you want, or you don't have to tell us anything. It's okay. I don't know what blops are. I get really nervous. Do you guys, can you tell that I get nervous? Like the last time I did one of these, I was like, I write a book like a triangle, and like up here is when stuff happens, and then it comes down on the other side. I was like, I don't even understand why I said that, but I was so nervous, and I just like, stuff comes out of my head and my mouth, and it happens, and I'm a little nervous. I'm excited. I swear I'm a normal person. I just don't ever come off that way. But
you're delightful and we love you.
We are blessed.
This is great.
Two marshmallow for the win.
Petition to have Alicia on every panel.
Seconded.
I was just like, tell me you like blops. Okay. What was it? I was gonna say something, but I got distracted. So I think most for fiction, the book is the thing. The book is everything, right? So if we're talking about memoir and nonfiction, that's going to be a different conversation, but we're mainly talking about fiction here. And so bios just aren't that important, to be honest. So this might be our last question, depending on how quickly I'll answer it before we switch over. Would you consider a manuscript with a portrayal of anxiety drawn from the experiences of the author to be own voices?
Yes.
Okay, you answered that question very quickly, so we'll do the next one. YA high fantasy, elves, dragons, magic, monsters seems to be on a decline in terms of publication marketing, but is it a genre you would be interested in reading or mentoring?
Yeah, so I love sorry, I can't talk. High fantasy, and I always will. And I don't really care if publishing. I feel like every day publishing is like, we have too much of this, it's dead now. And then you see like a book come out in that genre and do fine. I love fantasy. I will always love fantasy. So please feel free to send me all of the dragons and elves and monsters, and especially dragons.
Yeah, I feel like YA, like fairy stories, were kind of on the decline until The Cruel Prince came out, and now that's like on everybody's wish list. So I think it, as with everything, comes down to the execution, and if you can find a compelling and new angle on it, no particular subgenre is ever going to be truly dead. I mean, everybody's asking for vampires right now. 10 years ago, we were all saying that vampires were dead forever and they were never coming back.
I think it helps to know that in publishing, everything it kind of dies at one point and then comes back alive. And also, the book that you're writing now, people won't see for another 2 years or 3 years. So, I mean, there's timing is just who knows. It's all very complicated, and there's real no predictability. So, just write what makes you happy, and there's a mentor out there for you. I hope. But
Yeah, I agree. Like, things are so cyclical in publishing. Everything eventually comes back around. And you know, why I think high fantasy is always an interesting genre, and I think there will always be YA high fantasy readers. So I think, you know, if that's what your manuscript is, don't let that discourage you, because there will be a place for it.
And if you have monsters, send it to me.
And me, I'll fight Sheena for it.
Same.
I'm sorry.
I'm okay with that. I think the battle will go down.
By fighting, they basically mean sending like heart eye emojis at each other aggressively. So
No. I'm scary. I'm 5 feet tall, but I'm scary.
remember, I'm on Sheena's team.
Yeah, we're team chaos. You don't know. You don't know what we're gonna do.
Oh my gosh.
I come bearing like cake and all kinds of stuff. I can like manipulate my way in.
I've got Grace. She's small, but she's squirrely. I'm still confident about it.
How small is Grace that you call her small, though?
She's my height. She's the same height.
All right, and with that, we are out of time. So that was a great note to end on. So if I could just have each of the mentors, just this is your opportunity to promote yourself. So if you have any books you'd like to tell people about, or any upcoming events, and then also let people know where you can, or where they can find you online and such. And these are your Twitter handles down below.
Awesome.
You can just go around the ring. Yeah, start with Sheena.
I'll go. So again, Glitch Kingdom is available wherever books are sold. This is a YA fantasy where about 50 pages in, the characters realize they are in a fantasy video game, kind of Zelda Breath of the Wild meets Assassin's Creed. And it's inclusive and very fun, and available wherever books are sold. I'm going to be doing an Instagram takeover on the 25th. On pitchwars, so feel free to join me there. My website is www.boekwegbooks.com. You can find me at Sheena Boekweg on Instagram and on Twitter. And I'm done.
Okay. I am Alechia Dow. That's me. My book is The Sound of Stars, and it's YA sci-fi. You can find that where you find books. In libraries too. Don't forget libraries, very important. I'm trying so hard. All right, please. My website is alechiadow.com, ALECHIADOW. And you can see that my Twitter handle is also my name. It's spelled very weird. I also have a book coming out in 2022, but again, not that important to talk about now. I hope my publisher's not watching that. But 2022, it's a while. So, I mean, just like take your time. I mean, we'll look into it if you want. You can add it on Goodreads, but you don't have to. I mean, but you should. But like, just like skip over me now. I'm done. Sorry.
Hi everyone, I'm Daphne Tonge. Oh, sorry, Becca. Do you want to go? Oh, Hi, I'm Daphne Tonge. I am the founder and owner of Illumicrate. Crate. You can see a box up there. I can't do this mirror screen. We are a YA and crossover book subscription box. So check us out if you haven't heard us yet. I'm very active on Twitter. You can see my Twitter handle, DaphLT. I also do live Instagram lives over on Illumicrate every Tuesday night, basically. So if you want to see more of me talking, I'm on there. But yeah, feel free to jump into my DMs at any time.
And hi everyone, I'm Kylie Schachte. I'm the author of You're Next, which is out now and you can find everywhere books are sold and also at libraries, as Alicia reminded us. And it's a YA contemporary mystery. It's got like a film noir type of thing to it about a 16-year-old detective who's obsessed with solving the murder of her ex-girlfriend, Eva McQueen. And you can find me pretty much everywhere online at Kylie Schachte. I guess actually just Twitter and Instagram are the two places where I'm active. My website is also kylieschachte.com, and I have a pitchwars revision advice blog series that I've been doing covering different topics to get everybody ready for the submission window. So you can find that at kylieschachte.com too, and check out my blog. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This is fun.
So hello and goodbye. I'm Becca Mix. I write fantasy about angry girls and creepy magic, and I can't tell you about any of the things I've been working on yet. But if you want to come say hi to me at MixBecca on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, someday I'll get to tell you, hopefully, I think. Or you can look at my website, which is RebeccaMix.com, but there's not anything really exciting there, so you should just come hang out with me on social media instead.
All right, thank you all for joining us. If you all could go ahead and close out after I bring myself full screen so we can get J.Elle in because our studio is currently full. But thank you all for coming and answering everyone's questions and volunteering your time. We really appreciate you. I really appreciate the energy here today. That was awesome. So, and we're going to bring on our next set of mentors. So everyone, yeah, we'll see you around the Pitch Wars Clubhouse, which isn't a thing. All right, so we're getting our next set of mentors ready to go. So I did just want to say, if you are watching this embedded on Twitter or Facebook, you may want to click on through to YouTube so you can get your question answered there. J.Elle, you will be able to get into the studio now if you're watching, and you can because I saw you were trying to get in just a minute ago. So feel free to come back. I just realized what my hair looks like. It's been raining in Florida for 3 days, so this is what you get. All right, so now I'm going to bring on our next set of mentors, and they're going to introduce themselves. If y'all could just kind of say your name, what you write, what kind of stuff you're mentoring, and also kind of your Pitch Wars history. And we're going to start with Laurie. You're muted.
Sorry, I'll get better at that eventually. Hi, I'm Laurie Dennison. This is my 4th year mentoring in Pitch Wars. I write YA, most recently darker contemporary suspense type things. Yeah, and I was a mentee a long, long time ago back in 2012. So I've been a part of the community for a very long time.
And now we're going to bring on Margie.
Hi, I'm Margie Fuston, and I'm mentoring pretty much everything but sci-fi, so check out my wish list. And I was a mentee in 2017 and 2018, and my YA Paranormal is out next summer, and this is my first year as a mentor.
All right, great. Aty, you're up next.
Hi everyone, my name is Aty S. Behsam. I'm a writer, an artist, a translator, and an editor. That's too much, I know. And I was a mentee back in 2017, which is like a class reunion right now. I feel like a class reunion right now. And I have been mentoring Pitch Wars for the past 3. This is the 3rd year that I'm mentoring, and it's such an honor. So yay!
All right, Emily. Uh-oh. Can anyone else hear her? We can't hear you, Emily. Oh, I think maybe now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, I'm Emily Thiede. I write speculative YA fiction. My debut is a YA fantasy that's coming out in 2022. And I was also a 2017 pitchwars mentee.
All right. And J.Elle.
Hey guys, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm J.Elle, and I am mentoring pitchwars for the second time this year in the YA category. I'm co-mentoring this year with Emily Golden. Emily Golden. She just got married, so I was like, wait, did I say the right name? And we are looking for all sorts of things, mainly contemporary and all sorts of fantasy. So be sure to check out our wish list. I'm excited to be back. Oh, my book. And I have a book coming out in February with Simon & Schuster. It's called Wings of Ebony, and you can pre-order it now.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for joining us to answer everyone's questions. We have a whole bunch of questions. We're still in questions that were asked at 1:14 p.m. So we're going to try to get through as many as we can. EJ Wenstrom asks, would mentors consider Manuscript with a history, a previous agent that went on submission that needs a rewrite for another chance? Should this be noted in the query?
I can chime in. I actually know someone in a similar situation. It definitely should be noted. And I honestly think it just really depends case by case. It just depends on like how much of a rewrite it is, how that alters the premise, what the response was on sub, like all of those things, I think would come into play. I think the good thing is if you do enter and a mentor really likes the manuscript and it's noted in the query, they can then ask you those questions to get a better idea of like how much of how different the manuscript would be, because it's really going to depend. Like some agents won't touch it at all because sometimes manuscripts that are previously on sub are sort of still tied to that agent. So it really can just depend. I don't think there's a sort of blanket answer for that, but I always say shoot your shot. So.
All right. Anybody else have any feedback?
I think it also depends on how many agents and how many like publishers that the manuscript has been submitted to and how recently so. So it definitely should be noted in the query. But still, if someone falls in love with your book, they don't care. So you shouldn't really worry about that.
All right. Amory asks, how far into the query process do you think someone should be before joining pitchwars? We do have people enter who are like at all kinds of stages, so I'll say that. But Emily, were you about to say something?
I was just going to say that's such a good question, and I'm not sure I have ever figured out how to define the querying process because it looks so different for so many people. When I entered pitchwars, I had never queried. I was a big old wimp, and I wanted someone to tell me I had something worth querying before I tried it. So my plan was to start querying after pitchwars, but obviously since I got in, it bought me a few more months to avoid that terrible time. So I think I would say, if you've queried a book to 150 agents and a whole bunch of them requested it, but they said, like the timing's wrong or the market isn't right, then it might be possible that that's not the best book to kind of shoot your shot with, especially if you have multiple manuscripts. But other than that, I don't really see a scenario where it's an automatic not good situation, because if you've queried a whole bunch of agents, but maybe your opening chapter wasn't catching their attention, then pitchwars might be the thing you need that's going to help you figure out how to make that chapter really sing. Or if you've gotten a lot of requests based on your first chapter, but then agents said, I don't know, it just kind of fell flat for me. Again, this is a place where a mentor could swoop in. So I know some people tend to think, well, if you've queried a book really widely, then you've kind of used up those opportunities. But honestly, in my experience, if you really work on a manuscript and you make significant changes, especially if you do it through a program like pitchwars, you usually can go back to agents and say, look, I queried you 6 months ago or a year ago. but this is a different book. I mean, I've changed everything. And I've had really good success with agents saying, yeah, actually this time maybe I'll look at it. So I don't think that's a problem.
I'll also throw in my the last two, I did author mentor match as well. The last two mentees that I had, both of them had queried their manuscript and gotten quite a few rejections. One had gotten like 35 rejections from querying. She just sort of queried like all her favorite agents, and she got all sorts of rejections. And then she entered, I can't remember which, that was author mentor match, and we re-queried several of them, and they were very eager to see it again. And she ended up with multiple agent offers, and it sold at auction. So it is definitely not like if you have to have never queried. I think it just depends on how significant, like she was saying, the revisions are.
And we have mentees who have never sent a query before to anyone, so it's a wide range.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I mean, when I entered Pitchwars as a mentee, it was my first YA manuscript. I had like maybe one other person. Not even sure I knew what a critique partner was, who had even read it. So, I mean, I think you see that range from it's their first manuscript to someone who's been agented and on submission previously and everything in between. So I think, to me, the thing about entering is, what do you hope to get out of it? Is it going to be a good situation for you? And like really looking at the program and what it is, and knowing the kind of intense work and pressure and stress. This is already like a stressful year for everybody. And, I think you kind of have to make those personal decisions. Like, is this something I want to do? And is this my goal for the manuscript? And the stuff about the experience, I mean, I don't think any of that matters. If somebody falls in love with the story, you have a shot.
I'll add that in 2017, when I did Pitch Wars, I had already sent some queries and I had fulls out, and I still got in 2018. I finished my first draft the day before. I submitted it to Pitch Wars and I still got it. So I think even if you've already like revised and have queries out and fulls, that's fine. If you haven't, you could still shoot that shot and you never know. So
Great. All right. Christine asks, I just want to address something. Should the query be 250 words minus bio and manuscript specs, or in its entirety? For some reason today we've seen a couple different tweets about anxieties around query length, specifically mentioning word counts. So I don't know like what has happened there. Sometimes someone will say something and someone will take it, and a lot of people will take it as like a hard and fast rule. So there is no hard and fast rule about query word counts, just a heads up. It's not like the synopsis, which has to be 1 page or shorter. The query word count is kind of like a guideline. It's not a rule. So since I've seen a couple of tweets today about it, I just want to make sure like to kind of assuage everyone's anxiety about that. But if y'all have any comments on query length.
I'd say it's like, I tend to think of a query less about the actual word count and more about kind of the structure. If you basically have a paragraph a short paragraph that introduces your main character and what it is that they're looking for or trying to accomplish, you set up the problem that they're going to be facing and what could happen, what terrible thing could happen if they don't pull it off, and you have a little bio. If it's a little too short, but it sounds cool, I mean, if I'm your mentor, I will work with you on your query. If it sounds great, but it's a little too long, I will work with you on your query. If you send something that doesn't remotely look like a query, I think that's the only time that it might be a bit of a turnoff. If you send a 2-page long query, well, then that says to me as a mentor that maybe you're not completely clear on what a query is, which could reflect in the work. Again, if you send a 2-page query, please don't. But your book is solid. You just missed the day where they taught query in the magical writer school that we all attended, right? Then, I think it's fine. I wouldn't stress over it too much.
Just don't just put the words "read my first page" as your query, which has happened before. Yeah. Jay asks, what writing craft blog sorry. What writing craft, book, blog, vlog would you recommend to someone trying to improve their writing and storytelling skills? Do you have any assigned reading for your mentees?
I do. I don't want to talk much.
Just go for it.
Okay,
Yeah.
go.
I would say Save the Cat. So I don't have any required reading, and I actually don't think you always have to read the craft book. They're great, but if you're in a time crunch, the internet exists and it has a lot of brilliant summaries of things. Again, buy the book if you can. But my advice that I think has been the most helpful for me, honestly, as someone who had a lot to learn about plot and structure, is I found a bunch of websites that go through beat sheets that talk about various plot elements that happen and vaguely where they should happen in a story. And I find them for movies. And then I watch the movie. So the original Save the Cat. And I sit there and what I do is I watch the movie without looking at the beat sheet, without checking how far in the movie I am. And when I feel something that makes me go, ooh, that feels significant, whether it was an emotionally significant moment or a plot significant moment, I hit pause and I see roughly how far into the movie I am. And then I look at the beat sheet and I try to figure out what beat was that. And that did more for me to understand plotting and story structure than just about anything else did. Because I read all these beat sheets and all these books and I said, but how do I know what is the break into Act 2 versus the inciting incident? And so for me, at least, being able to sit there for an hour and a half or 2 hours and see it all at once and compare it with someone who's already done the work to explain structure was hugely helpful. So I recommend that to pretty much everybody.
I agree. I wanted to jump in with that one. On the Save the Cat website, there are just like movie after movie after movie where people, like individuals, have submitted like their beat sheet for different movies. And so that's a great way to see that. And over, like, if you feel like, oh, well, this doesn't apply to my manuscript, there's so many on there now that you can see it for like a romance or a mystery or all kinds of different movies. I totally agree with that. I don't have required reading either, but I have taken from all these different beat sheets that are out there and put them into a spreadsheet. And that is part of my homework, is having my mentee go through, and whichever one, like, it doesn't have to be all of them. It's like, which one makes sense to you? Because there are a couple of different structures, and then you pick the one that makes sense, and then that's the one you go with.
I think that Susan Denard has one of the best collections of advice for writers on her website. So I always recommend checking that out. And I also love Publishing Crawl. I think their posts on queries is actually what I initially used. And Susan has that as well on her website. I'm not assigning any reading specifically, but I mean, I definitely have lots of recommendations. If someone wants some reading, I will give it to them, but not requiring it.
Yeah, I also tell everyone to just read Save the Cat and Save the Cat writes a novel, because they are sort of complete each other. I like them. I like.
And then I would just add, can you guys hear me okay?
Can you hear me? No?
Yeah, I can hear both of you. J.Elle, can you not hear Aty?
Can you hear me?
I can hear everyone.
Sorry, there's a
I can
huge
hear
lag
Aty.
when I talk.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Okay.
Oh, okay, I can hear. Yeah, I think JL's getting quite a lag.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead and continue, Aty, and then we'll go to Jay.
Okay. So I like how these two books complete each other. And as for requirements and reading assignments, I think recommending books is different than like telling someone you have to read this and do this. And because pitchwars is like, we're going to be very busy. And I usually tell people, like, you can tell my mentees, you can read this if you want, but it really depends. The homework assignments really depends on what we really need to improve in the manuscript. So to give a whole book and just tell my mentee to go ahead and read it and do this, do that, it would be a little bit broad, and we don't have really that kind of time. We have to be more specific. So I usually give like if my mentee's manuscript needs more work on the relationships, I give my mentee like assignments connected to that. I say, okay, like you need to have like relationship sheets. You have to write them down. You have to see if there's no sin between these two. How are they supposed to be good friends? Sort of like that. So, and point out like the little things that might have escaped their mind. But no, not reading assignments would be a little bit. I don't think we have time for that in pitchwars because we're going to be very busy working.
All right, Jay, what were you going to say?
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. I can't hear you anymore for some reason, but as long as you can hear me. So I'm listening through my laptop and talking through my, whatever this thing is called. I was just gonna say, if people are looking for specific books, Emotional Crafted Fiction is one of my favorite. Story Genius, Save the Cat is like my go-to for everything, like everyone's kind of said here. I think it's hard doing reading a full book during pitchwars because it's the time. But I also say like what I have my mentee do is really dependent on the manuscript. If they seem to have a good grasp on structure, but I want more like emotional resonance or close to POV, then sometimes what I'll do is I'll recommend they read it, but then talk them through like parts of the book, or show them parts of the book if I can. You know, I'll do video calls with them. But I think I do try to incorporate those things, or like I'll even link videos or articles online that sort of summarize what the book is what the particular chapter. I think the learning component is so important, and in my opinion, like the best part of pitchwars, because like we can't guarantee people are going to get an agent or sell a book from it, but like the idea that you can come out the other end a stronger writer with a better grasp of craft and how to like a better reviser, how to identify things in your manuscript on your own and sort of self-educate in the areas where your manuscript could be strengthened, the better your chances are at landing an agent at some point in a book deal. So there's not time, but there's not usually time, but I try to recommend it a little bit.
Yeah, I will say too, as someone who was a 27 mentee who I didn't quite clarify in this chat that I did not get an agent right after pitchwars or with that book or with the next book. The next book I entered in author mentor match, another mentorship, and did not get an agent with that book, and wrote yet another one. And I like to tell people that I don't think that diminishes the significance of either one of those programs and what I learned. So I would 100% agree that I really, really think it's important that anyone who's thinking of applying is applying for the right reasons. Because if you're applying because you think it's going to speed up your journey, we can't guarantee that at all. If anything, we can promise you it's going to take you at least a few more months because you're not going to get a book deal while you're in pitchwars because you're doing pitchwars, you're not querying. So I think it's really important that people go into it looking at all the intangibles that they can gain, the connections and the experiences and the learning, because that's the one thing you can guarantee for yourself, because that's why we're all here. I did get a book deal and an agent. It just took a while. It can happen.
Yeah. All right, Jay, if you want to try to close and come back out and come back in, that might fix your sound. We had this problem a lot during Everywhere Book Fest because all of the illustrators for some reason were on their iPads, and for some reason it's like an Apple specific issue. Yeah, so it might fix it if you come back in. And we'll start the next question. Oh, we already answered this question, sorry. Oh, I did want to recommend Janice Hardy's blog. I think it's called Writers University or something. If you're looking for an article like about a specific subject, that's a really great place. I run a writers group for like brand new beginning writers, and I use it all the time. Like if they ask about show don't tell and that kind of stuff, she has all kinds of articles about like all kinds of subjects. So that's one of my go-to recommendations. Ashley asks, or Ashel, sorry. I read that wrong the first time. If your WIP is the first of a series, how should you best identify that in your query?
I think the query should be able to stand on its own, not to be dependent on being in a series. So you should write your query as if it is a single standalone book, but you can also mention that it's going to be a series at the end. Like mentioning it's okay, but while you're writing your query, like page and hook, you have to remember that you have to see it as one book, because that's how agents will say it. That's how others will say it.
I'm
I guess
scrolling.
Sorry. I'll pop in to wrap that one up because I did my book that I sold as a duology. And so I gave this a lot of thought. Actually, it's thanks to Margie Fuston that it's a duology. It was going to be a standalone and I had a very evil ending and Margie lobbied hard for me to change that. So what I ended up doing, and this applies for pitchwars and for querying, is I did my best to make the ending of the book feel as complete as possible, but to still have at least one big question that could be, or one big situation that could be intriguing for a second book. And so I'd say the same in the query. Make sure you're looking at your book and making sure it does stand alone and that it will be satisfying for readers. And then at the bottom of the query, you can just say this book is complete, but hopefully it will be the first in a series or the first of an intended series.
I love the little visitor Margie has. Aww. Hey. I love it when animals make appearances on these chats. There's one Stephen Morgan, his chihuahua was like, you know how animals dig for before they lay down? Was doing that in his bed behind him. So cute. All right. Christine asks, is there a reason why some mentors do not want a manuscript with multiple POVs? Yeah, I haven't seen it a lot. I haven't really seen mentors say, did any of you say that you don't want multiple POVs? Yeah, so you can't speak to their motivation, I guess.
I said we wanted no more than 2. And for me, I think the biggest thing we had talked about is like making sure that each point of view has an arc and a purpose in the story. Can be really time consuming in such a short window. And so we wanted to stick to 2 POVs. There are 2 of us, and we just want to make sure that we have enough time to do the edits that we think a story needs. And so if there's more people, there's more arcs to round out and flesh out. So
yeah, I agree with that. I feel like if you submit something that has multiple, I'm going to tell you that each one of those POVs needs its own arc and it needs to be parallel or related to the main storyline. So and asking questions like why do we need this POV? What does it bring to the story that it wouldn't from another character?
All right. Camille asked, how important is it to have a clear genre? Do you think that it's a good thing to have genre bending, or does it make books less marketable?
I will say, so I specify in my wish list that my favorite kind of books are what I call chubby hubby, like the ice cream flavor, that they have lots of different flavors in them. So I love books that have elements from lots of different genres. My editor has described my book as a rom-com smuggled inside a dark YA fantasy. But I think it is important to define the primary genre of your book, because at the end of the day, a bookstore, an agent, everyone, they need to know where to put it. So I would suggest, instead of kind of trying to make up your own mashup hybrid genre, if you can say it's a fantasy with thriller elements, or you can say it's a science fiction with a strong romantic subplot, you're going to have more luck than if you throw a book at an agent or a mentor and you say it's a mystery, thriller, romance, fantasy, sci-fi, contemporary. That then we don't know where to put it. We don't know what to focus on and what to kind of zoom in on thematically, just because it's too broad. So I would pick the top one and then supplement with other information if you can. If that makes sense.
I think I understand how hard it is sometimes to pick a genre for your book, because like for my 2017 pitchwars submission that I got in with it, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit distracted because there's noise here all the time. For once, everyone is awake while we talk, because it's not 3 a.m. here anymore. For once. Anyway, so back then I was confused as to what genre I should put this book into, and I was very confused actually, because it had very strong romantic elements, and it went with the romance, but it wasn't a romance book. So I was very confused, but thankfully, my amazing mentors, I think it was Marianne Marlowe, actually, amongst the two, I think it was Marianne Marlowe who actually told me that it's very hard to pick a genre for your book. So the three of us had to sit down and think what genre this is. And we came up with okay, it can be like a speculative fiction. So we went with that, but we added, because you need to have a genre. You can't say, well, I don't fit in. I'm not my book is not like other books. And so it would be a speculative fiction with strong romantic elements. So we added that LGBTQ romantic elements. So we added that as a little bit of giving more information as to that this is not just a speculative fiction. It's going to be more.
Yeah, my go-to recommendation for sorting out kind of confusing genres is to find a book that's similar to yours and go to Goodreads and see what readers have shielded it as most often. And also a lot of the times, I guess in my day job, I work with brand new writers all the time, like writers who are literally haven't written, their first chapter yet. And they say, oh, well, my book doesn't really fit in a genre. And a lot of the times it does. It's just they haven't read widely enough to realize. And so one time someone started explaining to me just a very standard sword and sorcery epic fantasy, and they're like, oh, I've never seen anything like this. I'm like, oh, so I give them book recommendations, yeah, so sometimes it's just you have to kind of look at books that are similar to yours and see where they fit in the market too. All right. My story starts with the antagonist. Is that bad?
I'm listening.
I think that's cool. I'm like, tell me more.
No, that's not bad.
I think any creative way to pull a reader into your story, especially with the opening pages, can be worth it, even if it bends or breaks a couple of rules. I don't think there's a rule about starting with the antagonist. I think there's definitely books that do that. But yeah, I mean, you saw our reaction. If it feels fresh or exciting or hooks in the reader, and as long as it has a purpose, it fits with what you're doing and makes sense to the story, I don't think it's necessarily bad.
Yeah, as long as it really fits the tone of the whole book, yeah, go for it. It sounds pretty awesome, actually. I like it.
All right. I've seen mysteries a lot of times start with the antagonist. Yeah. Or thrillers. What are your opinions on little to no romance and contemporary fantasy?
I'll answer. I have had a lot of people asking me if I'm okay with things that don't have romance, because I mentioned that I enjoy romance in my wish list. And it made me think a lot, actually, which I really appreciated, because I don't require romance in a story. But then I started asking myself, why is it that I do like romance in a story? And I realized that it's less about the romance most of the time and more about the character dynamics. So that's the long way of saying, like, I think it's fine to have little to no romance, especially, if you have characters that are bouncing off each other and are, bantering back and forth and bringing out the worst and the best in each other. I would bet that there are more people like me than maybe we realize, that like the things that we like about romantic subplots aren't necessarily the romance. It's that fascinating character dynamic. And if you have great character dynamics, then I don't think it matters at all. I don't think it matters at all, period. There are plenty of mentors that are fine with having no romance. But I just had that kind of revelation, so I thought I'd share that.
Yeah, this is the first year that I'm actually saying that I said in my wish list that I really want even the tiniest bit, but a little bit, but I want romance in the submissions that I received, because I got to a point that my own stories are getting too dark, that I'm currently working on, and I thought, okay, now I'm gonna work. And I love darkest stories. I can't help it. It's just that I'm punishing myself all the time with them. So at one hand, I said, give me darkest stories. And the other, I'm like, get a little bit of romance in the middle, please. Because I feel like, I enjoy a little bit of like taste in the middle of the whole darkness. So that's why I said that even if it's a tiny bit, yeah. This is the first time I'm doing this. Last year and the year before, I literally said that, I don't care if you have like romance or if you don't have any romance at all. But this year, I thought, well, I should change it a little bit because I'm getting too dark.
I would just add that I don't think every story needs romance. It doesn't always fit. And then I think there's something to be said about stories that intentionally don't have romance, because I think there's plenty of readers that appreciate that as well. I think I guess what I want to encourage anybody else wondering about that is that a lot of it is mentor subjective, and a lot of that is even one season to the next, like sometimes it's like, I'm living in 2020 right now, please send me fluffy cupcake stories, like that's what I need. But then, so it really is just preference. And for the record, we're definitely open to with or without. We love romance, but they're some of our favorite books that don't have them. So.
All right. Rowan asked, is there such a thing as a submission that's too ready for query to be picked? I saw mentors commenting last year that some submissions don't need help. Just a note from a committee perspective, any mentor can only give you their own personal opinion. So we actually discourage them from saying that this is too ready or whatever, because if we say that and then they query and they don't get any hits, then they get mad at us. But also just because it's one person's opinion. So if one person can't see what to help in a manuscript, another person might. So just a heads up on that. But if y'all have any comments on the question.
Yeah, I would say I would never tell someone that, because I don't see anything that I can help you with. Like, I still think that comes back to, you have to make that decision. Am I ready to put this out there? And that's, again, because somebody else may see something that I don't see. So I wouldn't ever say that specifically. I mean, we're all constantly trying to improve, and you have to come to a point where you're like, this is as much as I can do with it on my own.
Oh, I'm muted. I'm sorry, guys. I just answered that whole question muted. Someone say something.
It's so awkward because I was like, yeah, you can tell her. Maybe
I was
maybe
like,
Yeah.
it's my. I was like, it's my earbuds again.
All right. That's the first time I did
Everyone's
that
nodding.
today,
It
so
must
that's
just be
good.
me.
Yeah. All right. So just a point of order on this. It says on our FAQ on pitchwars.org, do not personalize your queries to mentors. The question was, how do you personalize your query when there are 4 mentors with 4 different personalizations? So Pitchwars specifically says don't personalize your queries to mentors. So it's just one less thing that you have to worry about. So there you go. And so no mentors will be expecting it because we tell you not to. All right. We have a lot of comments. We're still at 150. All right. So Victoria asks a question. How many submissions do you typically receive? If mentors are comfortable giving those numbers, they can. They don't have to if they don't want to. But we got about 3,600 submissions last year, and we had 110 slots. So if you do the math, that's a little over 3% of people who apply get in. And then if you want to do the math further, almost everyone submits to 4 mentors. So you have to multiply 3,600 times 4 and then divide by the number of mentors. And I can't do that math in my head. Surprisingly. But also it depends widely on the mentor's wish list, and also it varies widely year to year as well. And so there's always like a lot of want for the numbers. Like everybody really wants the numbers, and I understand that impulse, especially as an engineer. But the numbers honestly just don't mean that much, because sometimes you could have 30 submissions in your inbox and you have like 5 amazing ones that you want to mentor, and sometimes you can have 200 submissions in your inbox and you still have 5 amazing ones that you want to mentor. So the numbers just aren't as important, which really hurts my heart to say that as someone who's like a math nerd.
This is my first year, so I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah.
I'm a numbers person too. So I ran all the numbers last year. I love that about you, Sarah. I love the numbers. Numbers that I liked when I applied and didn't get in when I applied was the number of like fulls that people request, because that was always fascinating to me to know. Like, sure, they can get inundated with manuscripts and they read them, or opening pages, and they read them all, but like how many fulls they request. If it's helpful, I think I requested somewhere between 6 and 13 fulls last year out of 300 something submissions, if that's helpful. But I also sent feedback to, I don't remember off the top of my head, I sent feedback to quite a few, some of whom I didn't even finish reading their full, but I just thought it had such good promise that I wanted to encourage them. So I feel like it just ebbs and flows, and you never know what you're going to get, because every year it's, new writers, new stories.
I had just like shy of 200 submissions last year, and the year before that is very close, but I was a co-mentor that year. In 2018, we requested more. I mean, anywhere between 12 and 15. I can't remember. I was much more selective last year. I think I only requested 7 total. So yeah.
Kylie Schachte and I were commenters last year. We requested a lot. Like anything that we love, we were like, we have to request this. We have to request this. Like, imagine 2 people who are way too excited, then need to stop. Yeah, so we were like that. But because this question is like, I replied to these questions before in the last chat. I'm just going to go ahead and say that back then when I wanted to apply, I wanted to send my submission to mentors in 2017, I worried about numbers a lot. Like, I was like, how many submissions do they get? And then I was like, oh my God, 3%, only 3%. And I kept thinking about that. And then after it was over, And it wasn't the first time that I took part in pitch wars. And funnily enough, the previous time that I took part, I also did this, but I had forgotten that how it was no use doing this. Like afterwards, I was like, why did I do this to myself? Like I wrote this book, I revised it, I did my best, and I submitted to the people whom I thought that they would like it. That's it. It doesn't matter how many people are going to submit to them. It doesn't matter how many people take part in pitchwars. It doesn't matter how many people win. It's just what I love doing. So I did it. Why did I have to worry so much? So it was like my personal feeling afterwards. And like I said, I had done this before. I had forgotten after 2017. And I was like, wait a minute, that like last week I was sitting here and worrying that 3%, only 3%. Like I kept thinking about this as if it was like my life depended on it. And I know that you guys like, we love pitchwars, all of us. And I know that you guys really, really want to have your chance. But I think you should worry about your manuscript. And I think you should focus on your manuscript and don't worry about the numbers. Like if something has to happen, if something will happen, like you don't have to worry about the numbers like I did. Don't do what I did. don't follow my examples. Don't be me.
Yeah, I will also say it's not quite the same thing, but pitchwars is created in many ways to reflect what it's like to query. And after I signed with my agent, who, for the record, I queried her like the day she became an agent, so I had no idea, how many other people would want to query her. And then, out of curiosity, when I was waiting that 2 weeks before I could make my final decision, I got on Query Tracker and started trying to figure out how many queries she had already gotten in her first 2 weeks as an agent. And I think the one thing I will say is if I knew how many queries she was going to get in her first month as an agent, I probably would have thought, I don't have a chance. I should pick, now thankfully at her agency, there were only 2 agents. So it's not like I was deciding between 10, but imagine if she'd been at a huge agency and I'd been deciding between agents and I had crunched the numbers and I had said, well, she gets so many queries, it's never going to be me. And I'd self-rejected. That's what I'm saying is at the end of the day, it didn't matter how many queries she got because it was the right book for the right person. And so, even though both of us were quite surprised to have made a match and like the first week that she was on the job, it didn't have anything to do with who else was out there. You're not competing with other people. It's just, is your book going to connect with the mentor? And if it does, and if it's the one that they like, then you're good. So I did the same thing. I definitely tried to calculate my odds 1,000 times when I was entering pitchwars. And at the end of the day, work on your book. And if your book is great, then someone's going to love it, whether it's a mentor or an agent or a reader or whoever. So it's good advice, Aty.
I don't relate to Emily's words because I just want to say that your book doesn't it's not your book's job to impress anyone. Like it's just someone will fall in love with it. It's not like there's a target that you have to that one person. I have to make that one person love this book. It's not like that. You just have to have faith in yourself and your book. This is something that you love, so you have to have faith that there will be people who will love it too. So there's no target here. Yeah.
One other thing I would add, just piggybacking off of all of that, it's just that the reason I mentioned I can get into pitchwars is because pitchwars, and we say this all the time, is just one path. So please don't walk away if you don't get accepted or you don't get a full request thinking that your book, don't internalize that as my book is not publishable or an agent's not going to love it. It's very subjective. Even when you're querying, it's very subjective. Even when you're subbing to editors, it's very subjective. And so just as an example, I didn't get into pitchwars with the book that I applied with. I wrote a second book and I entered DivPit, which is an entirely different program. And I was able to find my agent through that. So it is just one avenue, and it's a great avenue. So you certainly should shoot your shot. But in my opinion, the best part of pitchwars from when I was a mentee and even now as a mentor, the writers that I've worked with last year, is leveling up your craft and really writing a better book and knowing how to revise. It's really priceless to me, book deal or not, agent or not, because that's going to have a long-term impact on your writing career. So
That's really well said, Jay. Thank you. Yeah, we do see a lot of people. I mean, just because it's such a vibrant and active community, we see a lot of people who I think maybe put too much of their hope into pitch wars. And I always try to tell people just treat it like one query. Like you're not going to put that much stress on one query. So just treat it like one query. It's one thing that you're trying. And then I always tell people, even if it's not right for you, even if you decide not to enter, like take what you want from the community. Like we have all these workshops, we have the query critique workshops and everything. So you're free to learn from those and take from those, even if you're not entering, you know? So, yeah, people definitely stress out quite a bit. And I feel like I'm just constantly telling people like, please don't stress out that much. Because it can be very stressful. I understand for sure. All right. Max asks, I've submitted to Pitch Wars last year and didn't get selected. I've done a major overhaul of my story. Is there any advice you'd give for a second go around?
I'd say I think the only real hard fast rule is to not submit to the same people again. But I'm going to give the evergreen advice of once you've sent in your submission this year, I highly suggest starting to work on a new project, just because it's people always say it, but I just find for me, when I was querying, when I was applying to mentorships, if I had another little project that I was working on that I was starting to fall in love with, it just took some of the pressure off of the first one. And so I would say, one thing, don't do what I do. Don't keep fiddling with it after you've submitted it. You know, send in your submission and then give yourself a little break from that manuscript for a while, because you're going to be waiting to hear, and take that opportunity to read some good books and watch some good movies and maybe work on something new, because you can't go wrong by doing that.
I agree.
I think it depends on the mentor. I think you go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I agree with all that. I was just going to say, I think looking very carefully at the wish list and getting a sense of whether it's tone or what the mentor, like if you think you need help with character and that's something that it seems like the mentor works on, like looking at the wish list and not stressing out over it, but really trying to use that to narrow it down. Probably more than things like numbers or, other, like if it's your second time around, you've been through it once already. Like just go back to those wish lists and see what you think might be the best fit.
Okay. I think it depends on the mentor, whether or not the mentor is like seeing the same story, maybe not the same story, but the same title and the same idea in her inbox. Like for me, definitely, if someone has done a lot of revisions, has improved the book, maybe I'm okay with looking at it, even if I've read it last year. I'm personally okay with it. I'm fine with it. But at the same time, I get where Emily is coming from. I agree, actually, because I know someone, you wouldn't believe this. I know someone who worked on the same book, one book, for 17 years, and he hasn't revised it. He just looks at it and I've seen what it does to people. Okay. And I tried to talk to this person a lot, he's an Iranian. So I tried to talk to him, but I think after a while, your book, if you obsess over it and if you don't move on, if you don't pack your bags and go to another character's house and start writing their story, you're gonna get too attached to that book in a way that doesn't allow you to touch it in the right way anymore, to revise it in the right way anymore, because you feel like you're making it worse. And after a while, it becomes too holy for you to touch because you have spent so much time on it, and you stop accepting people's advice and suggestions, and it just doesn't do anything good for you or your story. So as I encourage anyone to just keep writing and submit here and there, and I also I want to put emphasis on the keep writing part, because we're writers. We have so many words and characters in our heads, and if you get stuck in one story, it doesn't do us any good. And like I said, it's it's an experience, because I have seen what it does to people. So don't get too attached to one manuscript, and keep working on it and working on it. But like I said, I encourage you to take part and submit, and especially if you have revised it. But yeah, like Emily said, start working on something else at the same time. It's not like we're saying like give up on it. No, we're not saying that. We're just saying that you have to let your mind fly around. Like, don't keep it in one place. Don't like put it in this prison that you have to think of this of this one story. Let your mind free.
And if you get an agent or a book deal, that's the first thing they're going to ask you is, what else are you working on? That's the first thing my agent asked me. And then also, if you get a book deal, they usually come with an options clause, which means that they want to see your next book. So if you get too fixated on your first book, then suddenly you're like, yay, I succeeded. Oh no, I don't have other ideas on the back burner. So always do that.
Agents also will ask you how books you finished. So you will have a lot of finished.
Yes, no, that's good. I was just gonna jump in. I agree with everything that Emily and Aty said. I think just for Emily and I, if it's something that was submitted to us, it probably does vary mentor to mentor, because we definitely would be open to seeing it a second time, especially if it was a full rewrite. And I definitely agree that like you don't want to get too attached or fixated on one story. At the same time, if you feel like last year you submitted too early, or it just really needed a significant amount of distance from it to be able to really give it the overhaul it needs, I think there is something to be said for revising patiently like that. So if that's where you are, where you're just sort of like really trying to do right by the premise and idea because you think that it has potential, I commend you for that. I mean, I had to rewrite both of my manuscripts. My book that's coming out in February, I had to do a full rewrite of it. And there's just something to be said about the discipline of being able to do that. I will say though that between that time, really like allowing yourself to completely think about and love something else is really helpful, so that you come back with really fresh eyes. And so if you think you've done that, then absolutely, like, if we've seen it once, we would love to see it again. But definitely don't discount writing something while you wait. I entered pitchwars with one book, and the book that I wrote while waiting is the book that got my agent and sold. So I do plan to go back to that other one day. So
yeah, I think entering the same book, twice in Pitch Wars isn't a problem, because you think about we think about it as 2 years, but it's only 1 year apart. But if you're entering the same book for the 4th or 5th or so on time, then I think it's definitely time to start trying working on something else. All right, so that is all the time we have today. So thank you so much for asking your questions. I know we didn't get to a lot of questions, but there are some #Ask Mentor chats coming up on Twitter. So make sure you check those out. There's a YA one coming up, and then there's an all mentor one coming up. And also, I think most of our mentors are open to questions if you just @ them on Twitter, even if it's not during an Ask Mentor chat. So if you have a question that you'd really like to get answered, go ahead and @ them. And then I'm going to have each of our mentors just kind of, if you have anything you'd like to promote, if you have a book coming out you'd like to tell us about, or an event coming up you'd like to tell us about, and then also where we can find you online. And I'm going to go ahead and put your Twitter handles up on the screen right now. So we'll just go around the circle, starting with Laurie.
I don't have anything to promote right now, but on Twitter, it's at Laurie Dennison. It's at Laurie A. Dennison with dots on Instagram. You can @ me, or my DMs are open on Twitter too if you have any questions for me.
My book is Vampires, Hearts, and Other Dead Things, and it's about a girl who goes to New Orleans to find a vampire to save her dying father. So you can check that out on Goodreads, and I'm on Twitter, and also my Instagram is at Margie Fuston.
So as I'm working on my new novel, is it? We always get confused. Is it the right one, or
Go ahead, Aty.
should I mute it?
Go ahead, Aty.
Because the last time, okay, sorry. Because the last time I was like, okay, thank you. So as I'm writing my new young adult dark fantasy, because darkness is my jam. as I write my new novel, I'm also working on a manga with the amazing Moe designer called Darian. So you can follow the process of how we draw it and how the story goes and how we come up with the characters and how we advance the whole thing on Instagram, Darian Saga, because it's an historical fantasy. So we thought putting a saga in front of it would sound cool for some reason. So you can find us there, and there will be my drawings and stories there for now. And you can also find me everywhere because I like talking, apparently.
Yeah, so thank you for putting the Twitter hashtags up there, because it's always hard to spell my name because all the letters rhyme. But I am Thiede with an extra E on Twitter, because there's another Emily Thiede out there who claimed all of them. I think she's probably about 13 and she's got all my names. But so I Thiede on Twitter. I'm on Instagram at EKTWrites. My website is ekthiede.com, and my debut does not come out until 2022, but it's called The Last Fenestra, and you can add on Goodreads, and please do.
And I'm J.Elle, and my debut, Wings of Ebony, is about a Black teen from Kansas City who has to lean into her ancestors' magic to save her community from violence and crime. And it is out with Simon & Schuster February 23rd. It's available for pre-order everywhere books are sold. And then I have, that's a duology, so that's book one. And then I have a middle grade debut date to be announced, coming from Bloomsbury. It's called Park Row Magic Academy, and it's a inner city magic school series about a little girl named Kiana who learns she's a witch and has to fight to save her school from her magic school from shutting down due to gentrification and redistricting. So you can find both of those on Goodreads, and Wings of Ebony is available to order now.
All right, great. I was like, Blueberry, is that a new publisher? Cool. So yeah, check out our mentors on Twitter. Also check out the upcoming hashtag Ask Mentor chats on Twitter as well. There's also the forums. I want to remind everybody about the forums. And if you are unfamiliar with Pitchwars, you can get all the information at pitchwars.org, and also make sure you check out the submissions FAQ because it has a lot of questions answered on there. And I'm Sarah Nicolas. You can find me on Twitter at Sarah_Nicolas. Sarah has an H, Nicolas has no H. Someone else also has the Sarah Nicolas without the underscore. So, but they have never tweeted ever. And I'm not bitter at all. It's fine. This is my YouTube channel. If you could subscribe, that would be great. I also do some other things. I have a publishing talk show that twice a month, and then I have interview agents on a feature I call Agent Chat Live. And on Monday, actually, we have Jennifer March Soloway is going to be here for Agent Chat Live. So yeah, she's great. So thank you all for joining us. Thanks to the mentors for volunteering your time to answer everyone's questions. And everyone stay safe, wash your hands, wear a mask, and we'll see you next time. Bye.